Good morning, my name is Katherine and I'm one of the Senior Product Developers here at NOCN Group. Today I'm going to talk to you about the Operations Manager Apprenticeship, the new version 1.4. As I go through an overview of the standard, I will highlight the key changes that have been made to the new version relevant to the section that we are talking about. To start with, we're going to have a little look at the actual occupational profile. So I've put some information on the screen there for you, but generally, this role fits within all types of business models, so it's vital for a smooth functioning of all departments. The type of role that it is will provide clear, inclusive leadership and direction. They set and manage and monitor core objectives, making sure they align with the overall strategic objectives. The people in these types of roles will be development teams, manage projects, plan and review workloads, resolve problems, build key relationships with key stakeholders, and they can be found in all private, public, third sectors across all of the economy. The main changes from 1.3 to 1.4 are that the title has changed from Operational Departmental Manager, it's been shortened to Operations Manager. And the funding band has been changed from 7,000, it has been uplifted to 9,000. Typical job titles for this role profile include Area Manager, Department Manager, General Manager, Operations Manager, Regional Manager and Specialist Manager. I've put some information on the screen now in relation to IFATE. So if you do go on the IFATE website, there is a couple of things that you need to be aware of. So always make sure that when you look at the key information at the top on the left-hand side, that you make sure that you are always on the right version number. So the version for this one that we need to be on is 1.4. It has information about funding, about reference, and also about version numbers as well. So do keep an eye on that. Further down, you'll notice that you've got the occupational summary and duties, which can be found in the apprenticeship summary section. And on the right-hand side here, you'll see that there's a updated date. You need to keep an eye on that to make sure that it will tell you if there's going to be any new versions or a change to an assessment plan. And the EPA plan can be found underneath that, and it can also be printed off as well. So it is good to familiarise yourself and keep an eye on the IFATE website to see if there's been any updates or changes. An overview of this standard are that it is a level 5 apprenticeship. Apprentices typically spend 24 months on programme before they come to Gateway. There are 2 assessment methods. The first assessment method is project with report. It consists of 2 components, which is the written project report and then the presentation with Q&A. The second assessment method is professional discussion underpinned by a portfolio of evidence. The overall grade available for this apprenticeship are fail, pass, distinction. The main changes to mention here are that the time spent on the apprenticeship is stated now as typically 24 months, and this has been reduced from 30 months on the previous version. Assessor methods remain the same with small amendments, and I've highlighted these in the relevant section, so we'll go through these shortly in more detail. Updated name from the project proposal has been changed to written project report. And they have removed the 500-word brief, which was originally submitted prior to Gateway to confirm suitability for the project that the apprentice was going to undertake. This wasn't part of the EPA, and the Trailblazer group decided that it wasn't adding anything to the process, so they've removed that. Apprenticeship's journey will typically look like this. So typically they will spend 24 months on programme. At that point, they will enter Gateway, and they will be in Gateway, there will be endpoint assessment period for 5 months. Gateway requirement for the apprentices is that they must spend a minimum of 12 months on programme, they must pass their maths and English in line with funding requirements, and the portfolio of evidence must be submitted to support the professional discussion. The assessment methods are more detailed. So the project with report includes the 2 components that we've previously mentioned, and the professional discussion is underpinned by a portfolio of evidence. They can be delivered in any order. The result of one assessment method does not need to be known before starting the next. The main changes here, as like we've previously mentioned, is that the removal of the 500-word brief that no longer needs to be submitted. The knowledge, skills and behaviours and the grading descriptors, the updates for these are that the KSBs have been numbered and presented differently so they're easier to navigate. They have been made more concise and clear. There was originally themes within the KSBs on the previous version, and these have now been removed. So essentially the core of what is covered remains the same, but the wording has been updated and refreshed and they've been ordered differently. The grading descriptors for both assessment methods, the themes have changed. The coverage is essentially still the same, but the wording has been updated and refreshed. And again, the order is different as well. So it is really beneficial to familiarise yourself with these. While the core is still the same, they have changed in the wording and you need to make sure that you are familiarised with this. The assessment timeline for an apprentice could look like this. So at Gateway, they submit the previous evidence that we talked about and the portfolio of evidence. They start at Gateway to write their written report, project report, and putting their presentation together. End of week 12, that is the deadline for them to submit their written report and their presentation materials. The project with report, the presentation with questions assessment method could take place, and then the professional discussion. Again, these two can happen in any order, but this is just an example. And if applicable, any assessment that is internally quality assured. 5 days from the assessment, the results will be released from the training provider and the apprentice will understand what they have achieved. You'll notice I have put here that there's important key points to remember. So you have your end of week 12 to remember, and then obviously you've got 5 working days to receive results. Assessment method timings. So for the project with report, it is a written 4,000 word count report. It has to be completed and submitted, and with any presentation materials to the endpoint assessment organisation by the end of week 12 of the endpoint assessment period. The report must include at least an executive summary, an introduction, the scope and business need for the project, research and analysis outcomes, project outcomes, discussion of findings, recommendations and conclusions, references, and an appendix containing mapping of KSBs to the report. The updates from version 1.3 to 1.4 is that the title changed for the project proposals now says that it is called Written Project Report. And the wording in the list above has been made clear and more concise, but essentially the core is still the same. Component 2 of assessment method 1 is the presentation with questions. The time allocated to this is 60 minutes, and this consists of 20 minutes of presentations and then 40 minutes questioning. The assessor must ask at least 6 questions. Follow-up questions are allowed where clarification is required. Updates from version 1 to 1.4 is that it was previously 8 questions that asked, so this has been reduced. 2, professional discussion underpinned by a portfolio of evidence. The professional discussion must last for 60 minutes, and the independent assessor can increase the time of this by 10% to allow for the apprentice to respond to a question if necessary. The assessor must ask at least 6 questions, and follow-up questions where clarification is required are allowed as well. The 2 main areas for updates here are that the portfolio of evidence where the video clips timings, they've been reduced to 5 minutes. And where previously it was 20 pieces of discrete evidence, now it is 16 pieces of evidence needed. Grading will be fail, pass or distinction, and the assessor must combine the grades of both assessment methods to determine the final EPA grade. This is now shown on the next page, which is as shown. To achieve an overall pass, the apprentice must achieve at least a pass on all the assessment methods. To achieve an overall distinction, the apprentice must achieve a distinction in both assessment methods. And if the apprentice fails one or more assessment method, they will be awarded an overall fail. Resits and retakes. So anyone who fails one or more assessments can take a resit or a retake at their employer's discretion. The apprentice's employer needs to agree that either is appropriate. A resit does not need further learning, whereas a retake does. So the employer and NOCN must agree the timescale for either of these to take place. A resit is typically taken within 2 months of the endpoint assessment outcome, and the retake depends on how much retraining is required, but typically within 3 months. Apprentices who fail the project assignment method, they must amend the project output in line with the independent assessor's feedback, and they will be given 4 weeks to rework and resubmit the amended report. Failed assessment methods must be reset or retaken within 6 months, within a 6-month period of the endpoint assessment outcome. Otherwise, the entire endpoint assessment will need to be reset or retaken in full. Resits and retakes are not offered for an apprentice wishing to move from a pass to distinction, and anyone who does take either will receive a pass grade only for the resit or retake. So a roundup of the information that I've provided for you today. So apprenticeship title has been updated, the uplift on funding allowance, the reduced time spent on the apprenticeship, gateway requirements, obviously we've removed the 500-word brief written project report. KSBs and grading descriptors have been updated and made more concise. Assessment methods have been updated, they are more concise, reduction in questions asked, discrete pieces of evidence reduced. That brings us to the end of this update. There will be information available soon in regards to the documentation that supports this, and that will be available for you on Rubric. Thank you very much for listening.